I made my first $100,000 when I was 19. By 20, I was running a business that did revenue of about $450,000, $500,000. And by 22, I had lost basically all of it. Making money is actually quite easy. Keeping it is the real part of the game. But I can take you back and I can share with you how I went from 0 to, let's say, 10,000. That was the first bit, and it's fun. That part of the journey is fun. Can't read the script with those on. I was about 18 years old, 2017. Didn't really have any experience, no network, no funding, just a laptop and kind of stubborn belief that I could make something work. I think a lot of teenagers have that sort of belief. And it can be very powerful, but it can also lead you to make a lot of mistakes. And I realize now upon reflection that the first business you start is rarely your last one. I locked myself in a room for about 6 months. I learned everything that there was about one particular skill or service. And that was Amazon FBA for me. I don't think now that that's really one that you can pursue. I'm sure it is, but as I said, I just locked myself in the room 6 months and I said, I am gonna figure this out. And cut to, 1 or 2 months later into that journey, I was making over $10,000 a month. And I dug up some screenshots. Like I said, this has been incredibly reflective for me to go back and look at these. And 6 months later, I just kept scaling. I repeated this same thing that took me from 0 to 10, all the way up to about $200,000-$300,000 in 6 months. And I was a 17, 18, whatever I was, teenager. That's wild. My family doesn't come from any sort of big money or anything like that, so this was all new for me. I had to figure it out, And I documented the journey online, which I recommend every person to do. They lock themselves in the room, focus on something for 6 months, lock yourself in the room, and document your journey. I did that, I documented it, and people started asking me, hey, how did you do this? I followed your videos, what about this? And I started coaching people. That added another 6 figures to what I was taking home. And there were great results for the people who were taking part in it. I'm really proud of that. And I still got some emails, 2-3 years later about saying, basically you changed my life. And that just came about very naturally from me documenting what I was doing. And then, like everyone else, I got caught up in the cryptocurrency boom of that period. Bitcoin was around 5,000 and it was just shooting up to wherever it was. It was just flying up to the right. Like a young, inexperienced person, I put all of my money into that, basically. And I had all of it in, all gone. And in, less than a year, I was back to zero. I'd had this roller coaster ride up and rode it all the way back down again. And that was the moment that I realized I didn't really understand how to build any sort of wealth. I know how to make money. You can do that, but I didn't know how to keep it. So I did something at that time that felt like a failure, felt like I had to swallow my pride and I had to get a job. Any entrepreneur doesn't really like doing that, but sometimes you need to see past the salary. And if you're in that position now, or you're considering that position, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You can make it a positive. And instead of looking at the salary, look at the skills that you will acquire as a result of that job. If there's no skills, don't do it. But if you can learn, or there is somebody of influence that you can learn from, that's incredibly rewarding. That's worth far more than a salary. And you don't need a job, you need a skill. Or you need to stack skills. So that's what I did. I looked for a job, I learned some skills, and as soon as I could, I looked for a way to start compounding and stacking these skills on top of each other. I worked for a Swiss venture capital firm, and I saw how these guys really work with money. And for the first time, I started thinking about things beyond 6 months, which can be pretty mind-blowing at the age of 20 years old. To think about something beyond the next 6 months. How am I going to, pay my rent the next month? How am I going to get a nicer car? You can think beyond that. So for the, 3-4 years after that, I locked myself in the room again. But this time I did it for 3 or 4 years instead of 6 months. And I was thinking longer term. I was thinking, how do I take all of these skills that I know right now and change my life in 3 to 4 years' time? It might be quicker. It might take 1 year. It might take 6 months. Maybe I've misjudged the time scale, but I was prepared to, invest time into this for 5 years and see what happened at the end. And I invested my time into Web3, software, building businesses, automations, all of these things surrounding tech. I went back into building, but this time I had a different mindset. No hype, no fast money, just real practical solutions for people. In 2024, just last year, I sold up out of those companies, and that was a 6-figure sale. And I was back. I had my time, I had my freedom. I have all of these skills behind me. Now, in 2025, I can really see how that experience and those skills and these individuals that have impacted my life in positive and negative ways have led me to where I am now. The next video that I release will be my 2025 goals. I'm going to start doing that every single year. I'll share them with you. There will be, 3 or 4. It's not going to be a big page of goals because I think that's unrealistic. They're not going to be super granular. They're going to be about large accomplishments that I want to achieve. But now it's time to go all in, but in a different way. I'm building something bigger now. Distribution is going to be king. The only regret that I have, and it can't even really be a full regret because it was my way of handling what happened. A young person who loses a lot of money, that's never been introduced to that money. It's a story that I'm sure repeats itself every day for different individuals. It's not an uncommon or unheard of story. But my way of dealing with it was just kind of retreat, learn some skills, figure it out, realize you don't know everything. Life had to, take me on some journey and teach me some things. But the only thing that I wish I would have done was document that process. I know of individuals that were at the same position of me 7-8 years ago that now pull in 8-9 figures a year, which is crazy. And they didn't stop documenting their journey, even when things went wrong. But for me, I had to step away and process it. That's okay. That's a natural response. But now, watch my 2025 goals video next. Subscribe, because this year is my year. Oh, there's a bar there. That was close.